Welcome, everybody, to our From JSTOR Forum to JSTOR Stewardship, What You Need to Know webinar. I'm going to give folks a moment to make their way into our session before we get started here. We're just at the top of the hour, so I'll just give us a moment for people to join. Please come in, get settled, make yourselves comfortable. All right. While folks enter the webinar, I'll just go over some quick logistical matters. As you might have noticed, we are using a Zoom webinar platform this month. This is my first time hosting a Zoom webinar, so please excuse any technical glitches that might come along the way. We're not expecting any, but you never know. You might notice when you sign in that there are a couple options for where you can put questions or chats. There's both a chat box and a Q&A box. We'd ask that you use the chat box for any questions, comments, et cetera, that you want to share throughout. We'll be monitoring that box and we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. Just a note that anything that you do put in there is viewable by everyone, us as the presenters, as well as your fellow attendees. As I said, we will monitor those questions and we'll have plenty of time at the end to go through all of that. And we're also note for everyone that we are recording today's session and we'll share a recording out to everyone who attends as well as anyone who registered. All right, let's get this thing started. So welcome. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting before, my name is Jason Przybyłski. I am the Associate Director for the Participant Success Program as part of JSTOR Digital Stewardship Services. I've been at JSTOR since 2010, and I've been working with forum participants since about 2019. So I've had an opportunity to meet many of you, and I'm excited to meet those of you who I haven't. I'm also joined by several of my amazing colleagues. Anne Connolly, our Senior Project Manager for JSTOR Digital Stewardship Services, is here with us, and she's going to be presenting a little bit on the roadmap, what's some of the work that we have coming. And I'm also joined by the wonderful Elizabeth Behrens, who's part of our education team. Many of you who've been around for a while might know Elizabeth. She's been working with our forum, and before that, shared shelf participants since the JSTOR days. So we're very excited to have Elizabeth here, who's going to go through some slides and kind of show some of the differences between forum and stewardship and what you might expect moving forward. And then finally, very excited to introduce Tisha Andrews and Caitlin Pauling, who are joining us from our Stewardship Services support team. If you've written into our support team recently, it's very possible that you've interacted with Tisha or Caitlin. They won't be actively presenting on any slides, but they're going to be helping monitor the questions, and they'll help during the Q&A period. And we thought this was a great opportunity to introduce some folks that maybe you've emailed with, but you haven't had a chance to meet before. All right, so let's talk about what we're planning to do today. We have a few goals that we want to make sure to highlight for everyone. First and foremost, we want to make sure that everybody knows what to expect when the forum platform is sunset on June 15th. That is the most important thing that we want everyone to take away from this. We also want to make sure that you feel prepared and ready and confident to move forward doing the work that you've been doing, that you can continue to do that in stewardship. And then finally, we want to make sure that you know where and how to find the resources, support, and training and other information that's available to you. Very importantly, I want to call out here that you, if you ever have any questions about the transition, about stewardship, any questions about any aspect of this, you are welcome to reach out to me directly at any point. I'll put my contact information and a link to schedule a meeting with me directly via Calendly in the chat. And I encourage anyone, if at any point you have any questions about the transition, about stewardship, about what you'd like to do, encourage you to please reach out. I'm going to drop a number of chats or information and links in the chat box. I'm going to save that for the end when I'm not sharing my screen so that I don't I'm not multitasking too much, so I will drop that information and some other information in the chat box towards the end of our session here. All right. Specifically, our agenda for today, we're going to start by talking a little bit about the timeline for the transition. We're then going to spend a little bit of time talking about why we're doing this transition and what we're aiming to accomplish with this transition from forum to stewardship. And then we're going to hear from Anne talk a little bit about the product roadmap. Elizabeth's going to do a demo. We'll share some of those resources that we have available for everyone, and then we will leave ample time for Q&A at the end. We really want to make sure to spend plenty of time answering your questions and making sure you have the information and the resources that you need to prepare for this transition. All right, so let's get into it. So the transition timeline. The most important thing to know, the thing that you should take away from this, if nothing else, is that the forum platform is being sunset on June 15th. We sent this email to all of our forum participants on May 5th, confirming this date. We've been communicating over the past year or so about this upcoming transition, and we've enabled the dual access to both the JSTOR forum and JSTOR stewardship platform since November of last year. So hopefully you've had some time to experiment with the new stewardship platform and test out your workflows, test out the kind of standard kind of work that you do to make sure that you don't have any questions and make sure that the stewardship platform is working for you. This is the final reminder, though, in this next week and a half or so. If you have not signed into the stewardship platform, please do so. This is kind of the last chance while forum is still around to sign into stewardship, test it out. Let us know if you have any questions or experience any issues. You should not experience any issues. We don't expect you to, but it's always good to test those things out and really make sure before forum is sunset completely. We also ask that you make sure that you're sharing this information with other forum users at your institution, whether those are colleagues, students, volunteers, whoever it might be. Make sure that they know about this upcoming transition as well. Our communications approach has really been that we've been contacting, mostly we've been reaching out to our primary forum contacts because you're the ones we talk with most, you're the ones we have relationships with. So we've been sending these transition updates to you. We've also been sending messages to the JSTOR forum listserv, and we've had the banner on the JSTOR platform. So in those ways, we've hoped to capture or get the attention of as many people as possible. But please do just take a moment to let others at your institution know, make sure that they're aware of and prepared for this transition as well. And if there's anything that you need to help with those communications with your colleagues or other forum users at your institution, beyond the resources and the links that we're going to provide here, please let us know. We're happy to help with that if there's something that we can do. Looking forward, as of June 15th, the forum platform will be sunset. What this means is that you'll no longer be able to log into forum.jstor.org. We are not able to set up redirects, at least not initially. We might be able to do that in the future. So you'll still be able to go to the forum.jstor.org site. You can still get to that page, but there will be some information on there, a banner or something like that, that's directing you to the stewardship platform instead. Just as a reminder, you can use the same forum credentials to log into stewardship as you use to log into forum. So you don't need to change anything other than what login page you're getting to. Of course, if you do experience any issues accessing stewardship, using stewardship, anything like that after the transition, you can always reach out to our colleagues on our support team at stewardshipsupport@jstor.org. Looking further into the year, I've been reaching out individually to all of our forum participants to share details about the upcoming fee transition that's part of this transition from forum to stewardship. Just as a reminder, fees for this year, for 2026, are not changing, but we've been talking about upcoming changes for 2027 and beyond. So we are asking every institution to let us know by October 1 what option you'd like to, or how you'd like to move forward. And of course, if you ever have any questions about that, or if you've received my email but haven't had an opportunity to really think about it yet or look into those details, please reach out. I've had a number of meetings and conversations with forum participants as part of this, and I'm happy to do that with everyone if possible. And then as we look forward, in January of 2027 is when those new fees will start to take place. And that's going to coincide with whenever your billing period is. So you'll see that fee change with whenever your first 2027 invoice takes place. All right, I did see somebody raise their hand. I don't think I can unmute or call on anyone. So please, if you do have any questions, please do put them in the chat. I'm not meaning to ignore you or disregard your raised hand. I just don't think I can do anything with that right now. All right. So we have spent a lot of our focus, a lot of our conversation so far, really, talking about the logistics of the transition, what's going to happen with Forum, what's going to happen as you move to stewardship and all of that, and understandably so. We want to make sure that everyone is prepared for that transition. But I do want to take a step back for a moment and kind of focus on why we're making this transition in the first place. Why are we sunsetting Forum and moving to stewardship, and what good things do we hope will come as a result of this transition? So at the highest level, the JSTOR Forum platform was built on old infrastructure, much of which dated back to the original shared shelf date. So we're talking about infrastructure that was, in some cases 10 plus years old. And we were kind of really reaching the limit of that technical infrastructure of the underpinnings of Forum. And we were approaching a point at which we knew we needed to essentially reinvest and rebuild a lot of that infrastructure in order to be able to support this service going forward. We've also, as we've made some previous transitions, as we've gone from shared shelf as part of ArtStore to JSTOR Forum as part of JSTOR and continued the development of the service, we've been developing the service more and more into a fully fledged, digital asset management system. And this next step, this next transition to stewardship is the next step in that growth, in that movement to a fully fledged modern digital asset management system that can be used by participants to manage materials across their institutions. So this transition from Forum to stewardship represents both, a needed upgrade of our infrastructure as well as the continued development of the direction that our services have been developing. So what does that mean? That means that stewardship is going to become a more reliable, dependable platform. In ways that we're starting to not always be the case with Forum because of some of that outdated infrastructure. We've also developed stewardship to meet the new and changing and growing accessibility requirements, which is of course very important in terms of meeting federal accessibility requirements, but also just ensuring that all of our users have a good experience with the platform that we're providing. And it's really fundamentally putting us in a place where we have kind of a stronger foundation upon which we can continue to build and iterate moving forward. Because so much of the Forum infrastructure was older and outdated, it was really challenging sometimes just to make simple improvements. So with this latest upgrade, we're really planning that to not just have this be a one-time transition, but set us up to be able to make these improvements over the long term. So some of those initial improvements that we've seen developing over the past couple of years is direct integration with long-term managed preservation through Portico, which now with this move to stewardship, all previously Forum and now stewardship participants have access to directly in that platform so that they have a way, if they need to provide not just short-term storage or backup, but long-term managed preservation of their materials. We're also able to provide better, improved support for audio and video materials. This is also an area we've been working on over the past few years, but we've improved the experience of managing audio and video in the back end. We've improved the experience of sharing that audio and video on the JSTOR platform. And important to all of that is the development of supporting the creation of transcripts to really support increased discovery of audio video materials, and create better use of those materials, and ultimately to also better support accessibility of those materials. So those are just um, a few of the kind of immediate benefits that we're seeing as part of this transition from forum to stewardship. But as I was saying, we're really thinking about this as, once this transition is completed, how can we continue to make continuous development and improvement going forward? And so to that end, I'd like to invite Ann Connolly to come up and talk a little bit about what's on our roadmap as we start to look forward. Over to you, Ann.
All right, thanks, Jason. Yeah, so I've sort of organized this in three different categories. So the first one here is recently released, and these really speak largely to a lot of the things that Jason was just talking about. In particular, in this case, just really making things a little bit easier to use, updating the design and workflows, things like that. So we've made some bulk edit enhancements that are more in line with single item edit pages, and also added the ability to publish directly from the bulk edit interface. And then in terms of the user management and being able to add users, you can now add multiple users to multiple projects at once. So hopefully that makes it a little bit easier to get new folks at your organization working on different projects. And then we've streamlined the workflow with creating and managing sets. So sets are a way to sort of subdivide your content within a project into groupings so that you can work with them in different ways. And so we've tried to make that a little bit easier to do. Um, so these are also all things that Elizabeth in the next section is going to kind of demonstrate. So you'll get to see a little bit more of these things in just a minute in more detail. Currently in development, what we're actually building right now is we're continuing on that stronger accessibility support path, right? We understand that this is a really big need. They have extended that deadline, but it still is incredibly important, deadline or not. So at this point, we are working on the ability to add alt text for your images and have that alt text displayed on JSTOR if those images are published to JSTOR. We're also working on improving the publishing workflows. It has been raised from a lot of folks that the publishing target mapping workflow is um, not terribly intuitive or easy to use or anything like that. So we're doing some work to really improve that and make it more straightforward. The other thing that we're doing right now, which is actually a big piece of the work, is we're working on some new infrastructure that will enable more flexible organization. That's something that we've heard from many, many, many of you is this need to really have more flexibility in how you're organizing and working with not only your content and stewardship as you're managing it, but also your content as you're publishing it to JSTOR, how it's displayed, how it's grouped, different things like that. So that brings us to the things that we're currently exploring. And of the things that we're exploring, really what's incredibly important to us is that we're really learning about your needs and your challenges and developing in line with those. So we're already working with several people on these explorations. If you want to partner with us to join, to provide feedback and participate in interviews and testing and see sort of sneak peeks of designs, you can use that QR code at the bottom of the slide to sign up, and we'll have a link at the end of the presentation as well. So the exploration, again, this is that phase where we're sort of learning more about the need and about what it would take to build to that. Exploring is really focusing on that more flexible organization. So, for example, being able to move content between projects. One thing we've heard is folks don't necessarily know how they want to organize the content before they get it into stewardship, and they want to be able to do that after they get it to stewardship or reorganize it, move it between projects. Deeper project and collection hierarchy. So being able to build more hierarchical levels, both on the stewardship side for managing the content, as well as in how you want to display it on the JSTOR side. And then also on the JSTOR side, being able to publish one item to multiple collections. If you have an item and you want to display it in multiple contexts, That's kind of what that's really trying to enable. And then the fourth thing in that area is the possibility of creating portal pages to sort of pull together related stewardship instances, such as, consortial instances or something like that. Um, then apart from more flexible organization, the other piece that we're exploring in a lot more depth right now is the ability to do more efficient large scale ingest via an API. So again, a lot of folks are coming with, thousands, tens of thousands of items that they really need to get into the system to manage quickly. And so we're looking into how we might be able to enable that a little bit more easily. Um, Again, if you want to participate in some of that research, give us your feedback, see sneak peeks, all that kind of good stuff. Do take a picture of the QR code and sign up with us. Really, the way we've gotten to the things that have been recently released and in development already are from having those conversations with you all. So we appreciate everything that folks have given us so far in terms of feedback, and we would love to get more. So now I will turn it over to Elizabeth to do the demo.
Thanks, Anne. Hi, everyone. So I will be taking a closer look at the stewardship interface through some screenshots to highlight some of the differences current forum users can expect to see. As we go through these examples, you'll notice that many core workflows remain familiar. Stewardship builds on the functionality available in Forum while introducing improvements that make common tasks easier to complete and information easier to access. We'll compare a few key areas side by side and then take a closer look at how those features work in Stewardship. One of the first things users will notice after logging into Stewardship is that navigation has been reorganized. The platform is designed to make frequently used tools easier to access and reduce the number of clicks needed to move between areas. Users can quickly return to projects they've been working on, and this navigation remains available throughout the platform. One of the biggest changes from Forum is that Stewardship provides more persistent navigation. Instead of relying on top-level navigation and moving between screens, you can access key areas from the sidebar at any time. The homepage also provides shortcuts to recently used projects and common starting points. There's also a persistent link to the Stewardship support site on every page. User management in Stewardship has been streamlined, particularly for users managing multiple projects and multiple users. The process for assigning access is more flexible, and the available access levels are more clearly defined. This makes it easier to ensure users have the appropriate permissions across the projects they need to work on. Here we can see an example of adding multiple users to multiple projects at the same time. Rather than configuring access one project at a time, administrators can manage permissions more efficiently from a single interface. Access levels are assigned directly from within the workflow, making it easier to see who has access to each project and what level of permissions they have. The overall concept of sets remains the same in Stewardship. Users can still create and work with groups of records to show their workflows. The biggest difference is that set management has been brought closer to the record you're working with, making common actions easier to access. Users can make changes directly from the Sets panel, and adding items is now available through a shortcut button. The workflow will feel familiar to forum users. In Stewardship, the Sets panel provides a central place to view and manage project sets. The new shortcut button for adding items to a set, which is the little plus button next to the set names, reduces the need to navigate through menus. Users can perform many set management tasks directly from the Sets panel while continuing to work with records. Users have access to all available metadata fields directly from the new Filters panel in Stewardship. Stewardship also makes it easier to understand exactly which filters are currently applied and to manage saved filters over time. In Stewardship, the Filters panel provides access to all available metadata fields, making it easier to build targeted searches. As filters are applied, they remain visible on screen. This makes it easier to understand exactly why a particular set of records is being returned and helps avoid confusion when working with complex searches. Saved filters can be reviewed and updated directly from the interface, making it easier to maintain frequently used searches as project needs evolve. Bulk editing and stewardship will feel very familiar to current forum users. The overall process of selecting records and applying changes remains the same. Stewardship does introduce a few usability improvements, including larger thumbnails for reviewing selected records and a simpler method for removing metadata values. Here we can see the bulk editing interface in Stewardship. The larger thumbnails make it easier to visually verify the records you've selected before making changes. When updating metadata, values can be added or modified directly within this interface. To remove a value, you simply click the X now next to the metadata entry, and in Forum, users may remember having to type clear to accomplish this. Overall, users should find that bulk editing works much as it does in Forum while requiring fewer steps. While the basic workflow of managing audio and video files remains familiar, Stewardship offers a larger media viewer and additional tools that make it easier to review and present audiovisual materials. Transcripts are available directly from the Transcript tab, and Stewardship users can add or replace thumbnails to better represent media content. The larger viewer, which is available, of course, for all file types in Stewardship, makes it easier to review media content. When transcripts are available for verbal content, they can be accessed directly from the Transcript tab. Administrators can add or replace thumbnails to improve how audio and video records are represented within projects and collections. These enhancements make audiovisual materials easier to review, describe, and present while supporting accessibility and discovery. Stewardship simplifies the management of compound objects while maintaining their familiar structure. Users can view all related files from the Related Objects tab, reorder files using drag and drop functionality rather than using the separate ordering workflow, and more easily replace or remove files as needed. In Stewardship, the Related Objects tab provides quick access to all files associated with the compound object. Users can review the complete set of associated files without navigating away from the object. On this screen, you can see the image viewer in Stewardship, which now displays the files in the compound objects, similarly to how the published item will appear on JSTOR. And finally, I wanted to note that directly within Stewardship, you can now start preservation services with Portico. Preservation is initiated on the project level, so you find this option under Project Settings, where you can start preservation using that button. You can also read much more about preservation services on the support article that is linked right there. Overall, Stewardship should feel very familiar to current forum users. The workflows you've been using continue to exist, but with improvements that make navigation, administration, and content management more efficient. As you begin working in Stewardship, we hope you'll find that much of your existing knowledge carries over, while new features provide additional flexibility and functionality. And with that, I'll hand this back over to Jason to discuss resources.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Really appreciate you walking us through that. Okay, I know we've been getting some questions in the chat, so we're just going to highlight some resources, and then we can spend the rest of our time discussing and responding to those questions. So please continue to drop any questions you have into the chat. We will get to those momentarily. In terms of resources, I do want to highlight we have our team has put together some amazing resources to support this transition. I'm going to drop the links to all of these items in the chat as soon as I finish sharing my screen here. And for those of you who are watching the recording at home, we'll provide links to these resources in the email as well. We do have a specific transition page on our support site, which has all kinds of helpful information and details about moving your workflows from Forum to Stewardship. We also have a video playlist, which includes a number of short videos kind of walking through specific workflows in stewardship. Those are managed and narrated by our amazing Elizabeth Behrens, who you just heard from. And then I also want to highlight the new monthly training series that Elizabeth and the education team have been hosting. This is a rotating series of 3 topics that are held once a month. Those meetings are held live for people to attend and join. And if you do join live, there is an open Q&A period. So not only do you get the benefit of the training, but you also have some time to ask questions and get more details that way. Those sessions are also recorded, and they are available in that Tier 2 playlist that we'll provide the link to. So I'm going to share 2 links here. One is to register for the next session, which is focused on project cataloging, and that's going to be hosted on June 25th. And then I'll also provide a link to a page where you can see all of our upcoming webinars, including these training sessions, so that you can see what's coming up and register for them there as well. As Anne was talking about, the way we develop our roadmap and determine what we're going to work on next is by hearing directly from our participants. So if you're interested in participating in this research and ensure that what we're building is in line with what you need and supporting your workflows, and if you want to be part of a future research session, you can click on this QR code or go to this link, which will take you to a survey that you can fill out to join our user research panel. This will also have the added benefit of enabling you to see early designs and hear, kind of about what we're working on moving forward. So I'll also put this link in the chat momentarily. And then coming up later this month, we are very excited to host our first ever JSTOR Digital Stewardship Services user group. This is going to be hosted in the in JSTOR's New York City offices. So it's for the New York metro area. So if you're at an institution in this area, or if you just want to come to New York, we'd love to have you join us. You can use the QR code here, or again, I will put a link to register in the chat. We're really excited about this session. It's going to include more discussion, more detailed discussion about the product roadmap. We're going to have a working kind of feedback session to help us kind of iterate and think about some of those future developments that we're working on. And we're also going to have some participant-led discussion groups. And really just trying to provide ample time for both you to talk with us to talk with you, and maybe most importantly, participants to talk amongst each other. This is the first user group that we're hosting like this, but we are looking to do more of these in the future. So if you're in an area that's not the New York metro area, which is probably most of you, we'd love to come do this in your area too. So please let us know if this is something you're interested in. And if you might be interested in hosting something like this in your area, we'd love to work with you on that. All right, and then finally, before we turn it over to Q&A, we just want to highlight some of the upcoming conferences that various members of the stewardship team are going to be at over the next, over the summer. So if you or any of your colleagues are going to be at any of these places, please let us know. We'd love to talk with you there. All right, that takes us to the Q&A portion of our session. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can just see each other. I'm going to invite fellow panelists to come on screen. And Caitlin and Tisha have been helping review questions, and they're going to kind of help us organize and answer those. And while they do that, I'm going to go grab those links that I promised I would drop in the chat and do that now.
All right. Our first question has been addressed already. This was regarding if there's an announcement or guide about the transition to stewardship that we could receive by email and then share with our respective units. I know our colleague, Kristen Garlock, who's on our education team, she did share the transition guide that we have in the chat there for folks to check out. Regarding the announcement piece, I'm not sure, Alex or Jason, if we have a snippet or something we can share with participants so they can send out to their colleagues at their respective institutions.
Yes, I think. Sorry, I see Alex. You came on
Sorry,
screen. Go
I'm
ahead.
I'm I'm happy to jump in.
Yeah.
Uh, we we will be sending at least one more email that will serve as a great asset to just forward to your colleagues that would have all the relevant information. But if that's a need th- to sort of have a snippet, we could certainly also look into that.
Thank you, Alex.
Jason, we have a question about fees. Regarding the October 1st deadline, when you say how to move forward for 2027, are you asking if we plan to subscribe in 2027 or what tier?
So I'm happy to provide kind of a general response to this, and then for any kind of specific discussions about the options unique to your institution, I'm happy to have a one-on-one discussion. But essentially, as part of the transition from forum to stewardship, the kind of default is that all forum participants are being transitioned to tier 2 of JSTOR digital stewardship services. And we've, at a high level, essentially created 2 options for how institutions can make that transition. The first option is to move kind of fully into tier 2, including full functionality, support for preservation, audio and video, in a 3-year kind of step up period to move to the new fee. And then we've crafted kind of a second option that is really designed to meet the needs of our longtime forum and shared shelf participants that have been using the service, primarily to support smaller collections, oftentimes kind of visual resources materials, kind of those original purposes that shared shelf was built to support. That has kind of maintained something closer to the current fee with some more limited functionality. And so that's kind of the broad strokes of it. So what we're asking folks to let us know by October 1 is which of those options you'd like to move forward with. I'm happy to have, like I said, a one-on-one conversation with individual participants to talk through, specifically what this means for your institution, your JSTOR classification, how you're currently using Forum, and what that might look like going forward with either of those options.
Thank you, Jason. Another question we have is, can you say more about the preservation component of stewardship? What is the benefit of using preservation?
Absolutely. Happy to say a little bit more about that. And others, please feel free to add on as well. So Portico is part of the larger Ithaca not-for-profit organization that JSTOR is also part of. And for about 2 decades now, Portico has been really the gold standard for long-term preservation for published materials. So they've worked with publishers to ensure that their ebooks and e-journals are preserved for the long term. What that means is that, beyond just kind of storing those materials in the cloud or on an individual server somewhere, Portico is doing managed preservation activities such as running fixity checks, running checksums, managing or checking for file obsolescence over time, storing all materials in multiple geographically dispersed servers. So if something happens to a server in one part of the world, it's still backed up in another part of the world. Or if one file on one server becomes corrupted, it can be repaired or replaced by a file from another server. So what we're really talking about when we talk about this long-term preservation is something that goes beyond kind of, just storage or backup of materials, and ensuring that those materials are going to be preserved and available, not just for the next few years, but for generations to come. What we're offering now through stewardship with this integration with Portico is that same preservation approach, but for your institution's own digital collections. So if you select, if you follow the workflow that Elizabeth laid out, where you can select that preservation button at the individual project level, that would essentially then send the materials from that project, the metadata and the media, to Portico, where Portico would do those same things that I was just talking about that they've done for years for published content. So that includes running fixity checks, checksums, storing everything, on multiple different different servers and whatnot, and really ensuring that your materials are not just backed up in one place, not just stored on Google Drive or a server or something like that, but really fully preserved and guaranteed for the long term. We previously offered that kind of level of preservation as an add-on, and we heard more and more from institutions that model wasn't really working. And so that's why we took this approach of integrating it automatically with Stewardship and enabling that everybody who's participating in tier 2 or above of Stewardship has that option for at least some preservation. The kind of standard allowance is that you'll have 5 terabytes of content management in Stewardship. That matches what you had previously in Forum. That's if you make that kind of full move to tier 2. And you'll have 1 terabyte of preservation. So we wanted to offer some amount of preservation for everyone if you have it or if you need it, so you can use it. And if you need to do more preservation than that, you can always add additional.
To follow up on that, for the preservation limit, can it be enlarged, and for how long is the content preserved?
You can add to that preservation allowance at any time. Same with the content management allowance. If you need more content management or more preservation, you can add either or both of those. And that content will be preserved in Portico for as long as you participate in Stewardship.
All right, we've answered all the questions so far that we have received via the chat and the Q&A, but please feel free, folks, if you have any additional questions to add them in either spot and we can address them here live. Or if you have follow-up questions to anything that Jason may have said.
I'll talk for a moment just to buy some time, just see if there are any last questions. We don't want to hang up too quickly. I'll just reiterate again. Anyone here, our support team, our education team, myself, the participant success team, we are happy to hear from you, to talk with you about using Stewardship, about the transition. We want to hear how you're using the service, what you're planning to do with the service. We'd love to work with you on that. Talk with you about how you might be able to meet your institution's goals going forward, if that's something that you're interested in. So as a final reminder to please reach out. I did add my email and Calendly information to the chat. So please, anytime, feel free to reach out directly. We're always happy to hear from you and talk with you about whatever in particular you might want to talk about. As far as it relates to JSTOR and Stewardship, at least. I can't speak for anything else, although always happy to chat. All right. I'm not seeing or hearing any other questions. So I think we can wrap this up a little bit early and give everyone a little bit of time back in your day, which is never a bad thing. Really, thank you. First and foremost, thank you to everyone for joining or watching the recording. We appreciate your time. We appreciate working with you and you working with us. Thank you to my fellow JSTOR colleagues for joining and participating and supporting this. Remember, June 15th, Forum will be sunset and we will all move forward in the new world with JSTOR Digital Stewardship Services together. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Look forward to talking with you in the future.